So recently, I had the pleasure of playing Ori and the Blind Forest. It's a gorgeous game with an action platformy exploration feel to it. Metroidvania, for those in the know. Wait, come back, this isn't a review, I swear! Oh, you guys have made it clear that you don't like reviews as much as you do the discussion videos. Got it. Still gonna do them anyway, just not this one, okay? Anyway, now that I've gotten that insecurity out of the way, let's get on to today's topic. As I played the game, I recalled a review I had watched by none other than Ben Croshaw, aka Yahtzee, of the Zero Punctuation series. In his video, he takes the game to task in his, how do I put this? Rather direct way of what he considers to be a major blunder in the story. More precisely, he derides the point in the story where a major character comes back to life, or is resurrected, if you will. What struck me was his most pointed criticism, where he states that resurrecting characters whose deaths establish major plot points or create emotional tones rob the story of its impact. Going further, he claims that anytime magical resurrection is established, the story is robbed of the stakes in play. And in the video, he uses a pic of Jesus and the Sacred Heart for good measure. Now, to be fair, he raises a good point about the timing and circumstances about this particular resurrection. And I'd also go so far to say that resurrection stories done poorly can have this problem he describes. But I draw the line at the notion that resurrection stories always undermine the stakes in the story. Literature, both ancient and modern, have employed some form of resurrection plot points. Snow White, Gandalf, and even Wally have employed resurrection narratives. The sheer volume alone should at least give us pause before dismissing such narratives. Also, before we proceed, let's be clear what we mean by a resurrection story. The resurrection of Jesus Christ, a specific point in history with Christ living again with a new body, is a distinct concept. A resurrection story, for the purposes of this discussion, is more of a restoration of a person or world or things in between. Presumably, the restored person will just continue to old age and die again for reals. It's this restoration type that I will refer to as a resurrection story. So what is the overall arc of a resurrection story? Well, put simply, the world is for the most part well and good until some great evil shows up. The evil causes damage to the world by killing things and or people. Ultimately, however, the evil is defeated and the world heals. Now, so far this sounds like every adventure story ever. Here's a twist of a resurrection story, though. At some point, some force, entity, or power intervenes to heal the world immediately, or bring people back to life. This is usually accomplished by some power of divinity, magic, or some magic-like power that is defined in the world. At its heart, the difference of a resurrection story is the direct intervening force to undo some evil action that, under normal circumstances, is impossible. The clearest example being is that the dead are brought back to life. Others include the world healing instantly, the instant cures of illnesses and curses, NFL football games being affordable, miraculous stuff. Now, on the face of it, one can see how such a thing can be abused. Write yourself into a corner, ta-da! That important character who died is alive again, no sweat. This sort of thing can easily become a deus ex machina really quickly. So much so that one can become bitter to the concept of such a story. Having said all that, such stories are very prevalent in literature across a variety of different cultures. And that is because when done correctly, resurrection stories tell a much higher concept of a story. Stories that point to deeper truths about life, the universe, and everything. But in order to illustrate this point, let's take an example. Let's analyze Ori and the Blind Forest. Oh, that was close. Oh, and spoilers in case anyone cares. Here we go. Ori is the child of the spirit tree, the source of life of the forest. He takes on the form of a very adorable fluffy animal after getting separated from the spirit tree. He is taken in by a creature who adopts him. All is okay for the most part until one day the spirit tree summons Ori through a spiritual blast of light. Shortly thereafter, the spirit tree is attacked and the light of the tree is stolen. This causes all life in the forest to eventually die out and turn to darkness. The adoptive parent dies, leaving Ori to fend for himself. Eventually, Ori learns of his origins and gains enough power to find the orbs of light to restore the forest. Here's where the story is interesting for our topic. In the very first moments of the game, Ori wanders the dark forest until he can't go any further. Eventually, giving up his last strength, he dies, quote-unquote, only to be restored by the last power of the spirit tree. So right off the bat, the game establishes that under certain circumstances, the dead could be brought back to life. Ori's entire journey is about restoration and bringing the forest back to life via the power of the spirit tree. From high mountains to underground caves, Ori must place the power of the tree in proper shrines to bring life back to the forest. He pays the ultimate price at the end, and it isn't even Ori who ultimately restores the spirit tree. No, that final plot point belongs to Kuro, the bird-like creature who was responsible for robbing the light in the first place. See, when the tree sent out the light blast to summon Ori, that inadvertently killed Kuro's little kids because they're creatures of darkness or something. This part's a little fuzzy, honestly. Enraged, Kuro sought to kill the tree and spends the whole game trying to stop Ori from restoring the tree. Kuro has a change of heart seeing Ori die because, dramatic pause, Ori's adopted parent was resurrected through events not important for this point. But seeing the sorrow of Ori's parent makes Kuro realize she killed Ori the same way the tree killed her kids. She eventually restores the light, sacrificing herself in the process. All in all, Ori and the Blind Forest is well put together, and it uses resurrection themes properly in my opinion. It establishes the theme right off the bat, and all actions and events utilize the various meanings of resurrection or restoration. And ultimately, not everybody is resurrected in the end, allowing for some real sacrifice. But there is one tiny thing left. All this doesn't answer the real question. Does introducing resurrection as a concept remove the stakes from a narrative? I think ultimately, the answer to that question depends on your concept of death. See, if you're the type who thinks that death is both normal and the final point of a person's life, then it makes sense that bringing them back to life is a rewind. It's as if the huge event didn't happen and removes any potential for drama. Death is a part of life in this view, and removing that aspect through resurrection removes any actual meaning of death on the part of the characters. However, if you're the type that thinks that death is a part of life and there's something really wrong with that, then resurrection stories are messages of hope. A resurrection story undoes the ultimate evil, the taking of a life wrongly. Death in this view is seen as an aberration that we all suffer from. But that is not the way life is supposed to be. Death is seen as an evil, brought into this world through evil, and evil ultimately can only be vanquished by good. Thus, a resurrection story takes on a higher meaning. It is the tale of good triumphing over the ultimate evil, death. The restoration of the dead back to living is the ultimate victory over evil. The moral of the resurrection story is the hope of good triumphing over evil, even to the point of conquering death. For a resurrection story, death is not the final sentence for a person in the drama. It's a temporary state of an ultimate evil inflicted on a person. The resurrection narrative is about overcoming that evil and repairing what was harmed. The stakes are not removed from a narrative by the appearance of resurrection. The healing of the world from evil is the narrative conflict in the story. Will the good guys overcome evil? Or will evil triumph and death be victorious? That is what is at stake in such stories. All the elements of this interpretation can be found in Ori and the Blind Forest. Even more so is that Ori sacrifices himself trying to bring about this restoration. I mean, the son of a deity sacrificing himself to overcome evil and death? That sounds awfully familiar. That's all for now. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.